talking with Jack Spirko, legend of the survival prepper community. Good guy. I mean, Jack, how long has it been? We were just talking before before you started recording, when we met in Texas. When was that? You're good with dates and such.
I think maybe you bumped your head, man. It wasn't Texas. It was Utah. But
oh yeah,
it's kind of the Southwest too, right? We met in Utah at a prepper convention in real life, I think in 2011.
Man,
and I had been doing the show 2 or 3 years at that point, and we're still doing it. So I don't know. I haven't done anything in my life as long. I never held a job for as long as I've been doing this.
Because it's the stuff we like doing, so it doesn't really feel like working, I guess. I don't know. Let me know if it's the same thing for you, but my wife tells me you never stop working. You're working all day long, all damn night long. You never stop. I don't have any weekends. If I don't have anything else to do, I keep on doing something or working on something or sharpening something or tuning something to shoot. So it's always the same thing for me. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, I run a little farm, and that's part of my preparedness, and also there's always something that needs to be done. As far as the work, as far as the output of like the podcast and all, I finally, after 13 years in the last month and a half, went to a 4-day work week. Yeah. And but I'm still doing the same amount of work. I'm still putting out 5 shows. I just get it all done in 4 days. And it's because I love it. I love the industry I'm in. I love preparedness. I also love kind of the whole integrated lifestyle where it's not just about being prepared for disaster. It's about basically having a resilient life. That's why we do the homesteading, the permaculture, the gardening, all that stuff as well. But what I love most, my biggest passion in life is teaching. And the only reason I didn't go into teaching like as a profession is you don't make any money. Yeah. So when I was able to figure out how to make money teaching, then like I get to do what I love, I get to teach, and I get to like make a reasonable income because I'm not living on $35,000 a year, man. I'm sorry, I'm not doing it.
No, of course not. No. Well, I was a teacher for a while in the University of Buenos Aires, teaching architectural representation. Didn't get a single dime out of it. Nothing. It was all, what is it called? Ad honorem. Like you don't get paid at all.
I don't know. I don't do that.
Yeah,
I know what you mean though. Like you were doing it for the benefit of society or what have you.
I was, my students hated me. Some of them loved me because I was kind of harsh but fair, I guess, in a way. But it's nice. It's nice to teach stuff to others. That's definitely something. I was actually talking a bit about this. We were doing with Selko, the guy from Bosnia, and Toby Corwin. He's an instructor in England. We're going to be doing like a seminar in Sweden just when COVID hit, and we had to cancel the whole thing. We had everything set, and all of a sudden this started, and we're like, should we go on? And I had talked with I don't know if you know him. Has the name of the guy of the Pirates of the Davy Jones. David Jones is a guy that's an expert in chemical warfare. I had talked with him in January, and he told me that this was going to be getting very bad. Yeah, because it had already started in China, and he said.
So you mean January 2020? Okay, I got you.
January 2020, and he told me, "Look, this is going to be bad." He was getting. I don't know if they had called him for some other stuff. Anyway, he told me it was going to be getting bad, and I kind of that stayed in my mind. And when we were just in that moment of, look, either we pay for this stuff and then we cancel it and we lose a bunch of money and we end up looking terribly bad with everyone that's signing up for this, or we just cancel it right now and return everyone their money and that's it. And I told him, this is going to be bad. Stop everything right now. Cancel everything because this is going to be a huge mess. And I mean,
and it was.
It was.
And it was, right? Like, because people sometimes will like blame you for things that are outside of your control. Like, I can't control international air travel.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe I shouldn't, but I certainly can't. Right. So, like, I can't determine whether or not you're allowed to come to a place or what have you. But I don't know. You could have done it in Texas. We really didn't give two shits about this for most of it. We had about 40 days of interruption in the life of the average Texan. Right when everything kicked off, it was like at the end of March into April. And from that point on, there was some stupidity with mask requirements in stores or whatever. But I would still say like half of us just went, that's nice. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. 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 Well, in this case, it was a good thing we did because flights were completely grounded and all international travel was banned. We had people who were going to be coming from different countries for this thing. And I mean, if flights couldn't have taken off or landed and people wouldn't have been allowed to go in. And I don't even think that hotels or convention centers were working anymore. So, it's anyway, stuff that happens. But I just want to say, I remember the prepper convention. You were super nice to me. I was just the new kid from South America that landed there, and you were awesome. You were always very welcoming, and I was there just looking around, no idea where I was. I mean, I knew I was in Salt Lake City, but I always remember that of you. So I just really appreciate it. Just want to thank you again for that. It was great.
Man, it was great meeting you. I'm sad you haven't been here more. We need to bring you out here to Texas. I know you like to throw lead downrange, and we do a little bit of that here from time to time.
Yeah,
and, good fishing and hunting too.
Texas is nice. I mean, I've been to Texas, and it's beautiful. You have that more resilient. It's definitely a good place for a survivalist prepper, whatever anyone that's more self-sufficient or freedom-loving kind of person, I guess. It's definitely the place. Florida seems to be. What are your thoughts on Florida? Talking a bit about that, like different states and what they have to offer. What do you think of Florida as a place? Because people are now looking to relocate within the United States.
If I left Texas, I'd probably go to Florida. I mean,
Really?
and it's not just the COVID thing. I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, part of my childhood anyway. And my wife and I, we vacation in Florida most years, not every year, but I would say like out of the last 15 years, we've been to Florida probably 13 of 15 years at one point or another during the year. I'm really, really partial to Southwest Florida on the Gulf side. Our favorite place in the world is a place called Sanibel Island. If you live somewhere on the coast of Florida, you can probably never have to buy fish. I mean, we go, and we were staying out of a hotel room, and I'm flying in with gear like telescopic rods and stuff, and we'll eat fish from the beach 80% of the time we're there when we're on vacation. So, like, I think there's a lot of, and then you have shellfish and other things as well. So there's a lot of self-sufficiency. If you get far enough south in Florida, you have no freezes or you have very, very mild ones. So you can grow anything you want. It's a good state for Second Amendment. It's overall, it's a pretty good state. Like most of the liberal weirdness is going to be centered around like Miami-Dade County, a little bit up in Tampa. The rest of the place is very, very kind of a not really enthralled with the government kind of place.
Yeah.
I think their climate's probably better than ours, and they have a lot more coastline than we do.
That's nice.
6 of one, half dozen the other. If I had one other state I would pick to go to in the States, it'd probably be Tennessee for a variety of reasons. Plus, I have a huge contingency of friends and things like that up there, too. So, like, having a network is really, really valuable if you're going to land in a place. You know, those would be my three. When my wife and I talk about leaving, the only two places we talk about going are Tennessee, somewhere in the mountains, or Florida. But our agreement is if we ever go to Florida, the house has to be on the beach, not across the street, because the Florida summers, the humidity, the heat is awful. But if you're on the coast, it's like a different, it's like you go 100 yards inland and it's like wearing a trash bag from like with your neck sticking through it, and it's 95 degrees. You get on the coastline and it's like, it's totally different.
I live just from my bedroom and my living room. I see the ocean just right there. It's, as you say, 100 meters inland. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Little breeze from the sea changes everything. It is. We got hooked on that. So wherever we live, we always try to live very close. I mean, not very close as in driving distance, but actual,
there it is, right?
There it damn is. I mean, it's not as if you jump out of the window and you land there, but you see it very close, and you see the boats and all this stuff in summers. And with the climate being what it is, and I don't even want to open that kind of worms, but when people bitch and complain about hot summers and how bad it's getting, I just look at my watch, well, not my phone, and it says, it's not that bad. It's not as terrible as it is inland for a lot of people.
Yeah, I also figure, as far as all this climate change shit, I'll believe that the oceans are going to rise and swallow up everything when all these rich bastards stop buying houses on the beach, right? As long as the billionaires that tell me that we have to be afraid the ocean's going to rise are buying beach houses, I'm sorry, right? No. If you believe that, you don't do that, man.
No, honestly, I mean, if you look at climate actually changing, it has always changed throughout the history of the world. We've had many glacier eras throughout history. Every 10,000 years, is it?
Well, it varies, but I mean, like the last big ice age was about 12,000 years ago. We had the Younger Dryas period where we were in an ice age. We came out of an ice age, almost plunged back down into an ice age, and then warmed up to where we are now. There's some of your listeners may, if you want to know more about that, check out Joe Rogan. It's a bunch of videos here on YouTube, and the ones that have a guy named Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock in them, they go into that very, very deeply about that massive climate change. And what their theory actually is that there was two comet impacts. Like there was a comet that broke up, and we went through the debris field, and it's what started the melt. Or actually, we were coming out of the ice age naturally, and then the impact put us back into it. And then the second impact, like 2,000 years later, was an oceanic impact, and it blew water vapor up, and it kicked off this massive, quick melting, and it caused this, there were ice sheets 2 miles thick in Michigan. I mean, that's crazy. Not 2 miles wide, 2 miles thick. And then it melted in a period of a decade. And the flooding is amazing. Like some of the guy, Randall Carlson, a geologist, his photographs from the Scablands and all, you see these pictures and it looks like these little waves in the rocks. And then you put something in there for scale, and these waves in the rocks that are like when you go to a beach and you see the little rolling in the sand. It's that in rock. It's 300 feet freaking tall. It's like a house next to it. It looks like a little bitty thing. Like these catastrophic failures, man, this stuff happens. So I'm not saying we couldn't have some catastrophic climate change stuff happen. I'm not thinking that if I get a car that gets 10 more miles to the gallon, it's going to stop it, right? I'm going to drive. I bought a Challenger with some Bitcoin money this year, man, and I'm not giving it up,
Yeah. It's not as if eating one less burger a week, you're going to be changing the climate of the planet. No, it doesn't work that way.
No. Honestly, cattle.
Warm burgers, because Bill Gates wants us to stop eating meat, so as to stop cows from farting, which causes climate change, and it's kind of hard to believe.
I mean, honestly, if you're concerned about the environment, cattle are part of the solution if we graze them on grass. I don't know if you know this, cows. Well, you're from Argentina, right? Cows are supposed to eat grass, not corn, right? So when people say that the way we raise beef today is bad for the environment, they're not exactly wrong. Taking an animal, having it stand up to its elbows and shit all day long, and feeding a ruminant grain, that's a bad idea. We really shouldn't be doing that. But if we were grazing cattle on grass, we can restore ecosystems. That's a kind of big part of what we talk about as well in my world. We don't hate the planet, man. I mean, the solutions to a lot of these environmental problems are also solutions to humankind's stability, right? Because it really is, but you have to have the freedom to do it. We can't grow corn on 100 gazillion acres, pick the corn, transport it 10,000 miles, feed it to a cow that destroys the cow, that just fattens it up for its last couple months of its miserable life, and then think we're eating healthy or that we're doing good things for the environment. But, in the military, they say above my pay grade.
Yeah.
I kind of point it out, and then, that's what I can do, man, We try to encourage people. We try to encourage people to if you get land, get some grazing animals, start moving them around on the land and watch the land get better.
Do you have any what kind of animals do you have? Like cows or just smaller?
No, I'm small. I got 3 acres. And I live on a little rocky shoal. A lot of my property, my topsoil is like 6 inches deep if I'm lucky. So mainly I run birds. I run ducks for eggs, and we do take some meat from those as well. And we even run those like small scale commercially. Like we produce way more than we can use. So we sell at a premium. We sell it like $12 a dozen for duck eggs. And so that pays for everything. And then I have a series of small, when I say small, I'm talking like 4,000 or 5,000 gallon ponds, and I raise my own fish. Yeah. And those are like the 2 big things I do, because if I could, I would put in proper ponds, but with the rock nature of my property, I can't do it. If I was 20 miles south of here, it would be easy. It's all black clay down there, but I'm in undesirable land, but it's fun because we're still able to make it really productive. We do gardens, we do fruit trees, nut trees, all that good stuff. And, but our diet's mainly meat centric. I went on, when you met me way back then, I was all fat. I lost 67 pounds in the last 3 years, eating meat like bacon and ribeye and stuff like that. So I'm
the keto diet.
Keto carnivore, or Ken Berry calls it the proper human diet, right? Like this modern diet we're eating is crazy. Like you want to talk about survival. Like if you die of type 2 diabetes, you're not going to survive, right? Like, and we think things are healthy that are not, like eating huge amounts of bread and stuff like that. It's all sugar. And if you were to go back, like we were talking about that Younger Dryas period, like that period and back 300,000 years at least of humanity, people didn't eat large amounts of carbohydrates because you didn't have them. Until you start modern agriculture and start growing grain and like putting it in silos and creating this whole hierarchy of society, this entire idea, like we have to have people to grow the grain, people to guard the grain, people to tax the grain. Until we got that, like humanity existed on what was available to us. And if you lived in the tropics, maybe you ate some fruit or whatever, but mostly people ate meat. And most people settled along or moved along waterways. So fish and shellfish were huge. I got into this last year really deep into researching ancient cultures. And everywhere you find ancient cultures, you find these massive berms. And sometimes they're architectural, they're like ceremonial and things like that. But a lot of times what ends up when they start uncovering them, all it is shells.
Shells. Yeah,
shells, because they got stuff. If you have even a couple hundred people living on a river coastline, edge, right, or coastline or whatever, and you're eating shellfish all the time, it adds up, right? You have a dump somewhere where all these shells go, and it gives us very clear indications of what they ate. And shellfish, I think people don't really realize this, are high in fat. Yeah, it's good. They're really high in fat, right?
And it's delicious.
Good fats.
If you look at some of the Spanish paellas and seafood, man, you just go nuts. It is amazing. And it's quite interesting because the highest life expectancy in the world, it's usually, I think it's Japanese, Italians, and Spanish people. And I think that this year it was Spanish people that had the highest life expectancy in the planet.
Unless they got COVID, right?
Well, yes, of course. That's but the diet aspect, and people lose their minds over COVID, and I get it, and we're going to be talking that. But looking at survival from a realistic perspective, you die out of the crap you eat, man. That's the thing that kills the most people by far.
Definitely.
By far, the diet, overweight life, sedentary lifestyle. So eat them poorly. But this is also about money, because if people are healthy, you don't get sick. If you don't get sick, you don't need medication. If you don't eat crap, a lot of people lose trillions of dollars. So I mean, it kind of seems cynical, but they feed you junk food to make you sick, and once you're sick, they feed you the medications as to keep you alive and your brain not working properly, and healthy people is not good for business. So
no, we have about 600,000 people a year in the United States that die every year from direct or indirect consequences of obesity. And the number one thing that's killing people now is kidney failure due to type 2 diabetes that's due to obesity. I'm like one of these dicks that actually thinks we should call things what they are. So like, I don't even think we should use the term type 2 diabetes. Yeah. There's no such thing as type 2 diabetes. There's insulin resistance. So if you are unfortunate in the genetic lottery and you're born and your body can't make insulin, you are diabetic. If you eat Twinkies, ho-hos, and ding-dongs until you're a fat ass and you create insulin resistance, your pancreas is churning out as much insulin as you should need, but your body can't use it anymore, then you are not diabetic, you are insulin resistant. And that is the number one thing killing people in the Western world today. And when I say Western, I just mean the modern world, like Europe, United States, Japan, China, anywhere that's developed. Like that's what's killing us today is diet. I watched this really interesting documentary during the COVID lockdowns, right? And it was these Australian indigenous aboriginals. And they went in, they asked these people, they're all overweight too. They're all fat. They're all living on basically welfare controlled by the state. And they asked these really old ladies, like, so what did people used to die from? And they're like, well, what do people die from now? Diabetes, heart disease, stuff like that. What did they used to die from? Like when you were young? And they said, no, they said it would be things like infectious diseases. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But then, and they're like, okay, well, what did people die of before that? And they looked at each other. These two huge fat ladies looked at each other and they thought about it. And the one goes, old age. Yeah. Oh, that's what they died of, is they died of old age. Before we had these lifestyle diseases and before we went there and like exposed them to all these zoonotic viruses that they were just like we did in the United States, right? Like smallpox and stuff like that. But once that was beat, you would have thought their lives would have extended, but it came right along with these shifts in diet and shoving all this crap into people. When I was a kid, dude, I'm so old, I'm almost 50, right? So I'm really not that old. I'm talking about the 80s here. When we left Florida, we went to where the rest of my family is from in Pennsylvania, and we have a lot of gun clubs up there. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a bar, and you shoot when you're not drunk. And my uncle would take me after church every day or every Sunday up to the gun club, and so it's a bar, but it also has soda and stuff. And I would get this one, like it was a soda called a Green Spot, and it was like in an 8-ounce bottle, and I'd get one of those a week. And it's not because we were poor; it's just because like you just didn't shove down Pepsi and Coke and whatever all the time. You get one soda a week, that's not going to mess a kid up. And now, I mean, look, they're like 87,000 ounce giant gulps or whatever.
It's huge. When I was a kid, and again, we start talking like old farts, and we're really not that old. But
okay, Gilbert.
Okay, when I was a kid, the bottle was 1 liter. I don't know if you know the conversion, but 1 liter was the bottle for a family. And I remember sitting in the family table. We had dinner, family table, and it was like 5 of us. 1 liter, and you just had the glass. It was this much of Coke. That was it. You didn't have like when we had those, when we went to visit or holidays in the United States. That's when we bought the huge 3 liter
super gulp
gallon whatever thing.
Yeah,
and and it's very. When I was in Texas a long time ago as well. I was visiting over there, and we went for a coffee, Starbucks of all places, Starbucks. And of course, you just want to have a coffee, and they look at what we're, no macchiato bullshit, whatever. No, just a coffee. And I did like this because in the rest of the world, a coffee is something. This is the same for Latin America, all of Latin America, all of Europe. A coffee is this. It's small. Unless you go for if you go to a Starbucks, you start buying the more Americanized kind of sugary crap. But if not, a coffee is small. It's a little thing where you just have a little bit of a caffeine boost and you go on with your life. So I did, and the chick in the in the Starbucks said, like, and she brought me like a half a bucket, and she said, "This is the smallest one we have." Yeah, okay, just get me that one, but don't fill it all the way on the top. Just give me half of it. And she said, like, but you're buying all of it. I don't care. I'm not going to
throw it away, right? Yeah,
right. I don't want to drink it. I want to throw it away. Just fill it up halfway through. She looked at me as if I was from damn Venus. She just couldn't understand that someone didn't want the whole thing. And it wasn't that I was trying to be weird or uncomfortable in any way. It's just that I honestly couldn't understand how they don't have a smaller a cup, for someone that doesn't want half a gallon of the crappy, horrible coffee that they're selling over there.
I get that now with, like, if we do go to a restaurant or something, and since I really don't eat carbohydrates, they'll be like, well, what do you want with your steak?
Yeah.
Steak? Meat. Like, they're like, well, do you want French fries or no? No. And if they have like grilled vegetables or something, I'll take the grilled vegetables. Well, you get two sides. I don't need two sides. Well, you want double vegetables? No, because I won't eat them and I'll throw them away, and I don't like to waste food. And they do. They look at you like you have like something coming out of the side of your head or something because you dare to like not take something just because you're entitled to have it.
Right.
That's what they don't understand, is that you literally are turning down something you're entitled to.
Free.
But
something is free.
But you're not going to eat it.
And it's not good for you, even if you do eat it. So
I just don't like to throw food away. I just find that incredibly wasteful. Like you, I've been, more than just in one place. I spent a lot of time in Central America while I was in the military. I've been places where when you look at what people throw away, there is no food.
Yeah.
People do not throw away food. No. And seeing people live that way, like that was back in 1989, 1990, 1991, up through 93 that I was in the military. That stuck in my soul, and it will never go away. Seeing people that, like, you throw them the crackers out of an MRE and they start like you just gave them a diamond ring or something. Like, seeing people that hungry, like, that will never go away from me. I kind of feel that, like, I'm totally opposed to any kind of state control of any person, but I can't say that society wouldn't be better off if at least all young men went and served a couple of years overseas and understood. Yeah. And that doesn't have to be military. Yeah. It doesn't have to be military. It could be Peace Corps. It could be relief work. It could be missionary. Just understand how spoiled you actually are. Because even when people say we're spoiled, they don't have any idea. They don't have any. Most people the concept that there is no food in the garbage at all is very difficult for some people to grasp.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree with you in terms of some service. And I guess this goes against, our common shared core of, libertarian, you're not being for, but I couldn't agree more with, if you had, like, after school, a year of some sort of, look, I was reading about in Switzerland, all of a sudden you get a letter like, show up for your firefighter work, and you have to show up and be a damn firefighter for I don't know how long. But I have a job. Don't worry, we're going to be paying. It doesn't change anything. But you have to drag your ass and be a firefighter or some kind of civil servant of some sort for a period of time, because that's your responsibility. The idea of having both privileges, advantages, and certain responsibilities. I think it would be a much better world if everyone did at least a year, something.
Yeah, I think Italy does that too. And if you don't want to do military service, you can do like medical relief work or something like that. I think it's a 2-year commitment there. I know Israel has a requirement, In Honduras, it's like it's a requirement if your number comes up, but it's not a number. It's like all the Honduran infantry I was with down there, you can serve at 16. So if you're over 16, what'll happen is, like, you're at a discotheque jamming out, chasing chicks or whatever, and like a couple of military trucks roll up. And some soldiers like walk in and they line everybody up and they bring you through and they check your ID, right? They check your ID. And if you're over 16 and you're male, they're like, have you ever served? Yeah. And if you're like, yeah, you better, they give you a card when you get out, right? If you don't have that card, get in the truck. And so they load up the trucks and they keep going around to different locations. Like they say, go get 500 guys. So they keep doing it until they meet their quota for that enlistment cycle. Once they meet it, like, you could be the next guy in line. Okay, you're good. Like, you try to get the back of line. Like, all these guys have the same story. And then you don't even, like, they take you to basic and then you write a letter to your mom or whatever saying, like, if you haven't heard yet, this is where I am and I'm okay. And then you do 2 years and then they can get out or they can stay in. And like, you know, like staff sergeants are like 20 years old because they draft them so young. So sometimes, you know, they like it and they stay in. And a lieutenant in the Honduran army, that's like a freaking colonel in the U.S. Army. Like, Teniente, man, he's a bad dude. You don't mess with the Teniente. And we do live in this totally different world. Yeah. I know you're not in the U.S., so I don't want to say just the U.S. The developed world has lost connection with how the rest of the world is and what it exists like and what it's like to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, Switzerland, I think that they have those guys that they have the right idea in terms of, you know, you have to serve. And I think that they have like politicians. It's not paid for. I mean, they brag about how little they spend. You know, for example, in your municipality or whatever,
they still manage to tax you higher than like any other country in the world at the same time. I mean,
yeah, but I just love the the prepper aspect of it. The way, of course.
Everybody's armed. Like, hey, you're gonna get your training. Here's your gun. Take it home.
Go home. You have an entire country that can put 110% of its population underground. 110%. So, and you know, if you're building a house, you're building a new house, they go like, okay, where's the fallout shelter for this? You know, and you go like, no, we don't have one. And they go like, but you're outside of the city limits, so you couldn't access the fallout shelter in the village. If you're that far away, you need, by code, you need a fallout shelter in your fancy new house. I love that sort of stuff.
I mean, you got to admire the Swiss to sit dead center in the middle of World War II, and just everything just goes around. Like, no, we're not doing it. Not doing it. No.
Man, and Talk about fighting determined tough people in the mountains. Let me, look at how that turned out in Afghanistan. Imagine going after the damn Swiss. How organized and armed those guys are. That is a complete nightmare.
They're good shots too.
Yeah, they're good shooters.
There seems to be an inherent genetic predisposition to marksmanship among the Swiss. Like, I'm not saying they are all the best, but like, in general, the average Swiss is a better shot than the average American, average Frenchman, etc. You know.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this, that they had like a shooting range that went over a highway. Did you know about that?
No.
They had a shooting range that, making, typical Swiss mentality. We're going to be putting a shooting range. And since the ballistics wouldn't allow for, these bullets to impact because it was probably a hill over here. So they shot over the highway because it wouldn't be hitting them anyway. Long range shooting over.
There's a story, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but supposedly some military general, from Germany visited Switzerland and said something like to one of their field marshals or whatever, like, what would you do if the entire German army came over the hill? And he goes, every man would have to fire twice.
Yeah, and go back home. Yeah. No, they have they keep their rifles in their own house, and I think they can actually buy their service pistol as well. I don't know, something along those lines. But
I heard that they don't have ammo though. Like, you have to go draw your ammo if it's needed or something like that. I don't know if there's any truth to that or whatever.
I looked into that. I mean, the rifle, you definitely have it in your house because you're expected to go out, and it used to be that you got like a packet of ammunition. But I mean, these guys will have it anyway. They're not going to be caught without ammunition.
It's not exactly that hard of an ammo to find, right? Like, yeah. Now in Texas, when you're born, they just give you a gun, right? Like, now it's really, like, people think that it really isn't. Like, we're like any other place in the world, except we do have the freedom to own, and we now have. So I think it's September 1st will kick in unlicensed carry, or what we call constitutional carry in the United States. Yeah. That's a good move forward. Now, being, years behind Washington State and Virginia, I consider it kind of embarrassing. We've only had concealed carry with permits in Texas since the 90s. George Bush Jr., when he was our governor, actually signed into law concealed carry in the state of Texas. So people think like it goes back to the Old West or whatever.
No.
And actually, we had pretty severe restrictions on carry in Texas, and that goes back to the Old West. Because in like the 1880s, 1890s, guys were just shooting the shit out of each other. And so they were like, well, we got to do something about it. And a lot of the restrictions on carry in Texas came from that time. And then you have these legacy laws that like, and you know how that is. It's hard to get a law passed.
Yeah.
But once you do, it's much harder to get it gone,
and
right?
done.
Like,
yes.
yeah, like
Absolutely.
You don't ever let the government do anything because whatever they do, like undoing it. It's like moving a mountain, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But is that linked to this idea of when you were like visiting the town, the tavern, you had to surrender your gun, so as to go into the saloon or whatever?
We had things like that, yeah. There were like that. Towns had ordinances that said like you can't carry in the city limits. And so like basically you'd go in and you give your gun to the sheriff and they would tag it for you and give it back to you when you left because people were getting
that expanded.
And there was a lot of that in a lot of the Old West towns like Texas, Kansas, all over the West, Montana, et cetera, because dudes would go get drunk and shoot each other. Right? I mean, like, it was like, when they say it's like the Old West, there's a reason they use that term. And then the whole, it all got romanticized, but this whole idea, like, we were talking about this with a guest recently, like the whole quick draw thing. We think of as like the guy that's fastest with the gun. That's not what quick draw meant. Quick draw was how quick was this guy to pull his gun out and shoot you, right? That was the original quick draw. If they said a guy was a quick draw, that means he was a drunken asshole that would just kill people if he thought he could get away with it. And like, so I understand where that came from. There were probably other ways to deal with it, but that's where a lot of that came from. And there's this mystique around places like Texas, like everybody has a gun or whatever. I'd say like probably 30% of Texans are armed.
Just 30%?
I would say that's probably right. When you start looking at like the population centers of like Austin, Houston, Dallas, etc. I'd say if riots break out in Dallas and you start going into businesses, you probably have a 1 in 10 chance in Dallas. If you go through 10 doors, you're going to get hammered in one of them. Fort Worth, over toward my side of where I live, you start breaking into businesses in Fort Worth, and I think you're going to 1 in 3, maybe 1 in 2. Like you have a pretty good odds of you kick a door in and you're going to get the hammer dropped on you.
Dallas, Fort Worth, it would be like the more conservative, and Austin would be the more liberal side of Texas. Is that a correct assumption, or am I completely off?
Yes and no. So the problem was you included Dallas with Fort Worth. So Dallas itself is very liberal.
You took offense.
No, it's just because people say Dallas, Fort Worth like it's a place. Right. So Dallas and Fort Worth are 18 miles apart. Right. And then Dallas is very, very liberal in Dallas City, but then it's surrounded by suburbs and they're generally very, very conservative. And then Fort Worth is a very conservative city. When the Black Lives Matter crap was going on last year, we have this mousy little mayor, Betsy Price, and she's itty bitty little thing. And she was like, I just want everybody to know, if you break into a house or a business in Fort Worth,
get shot.
that Texans have a right to defend themselves and a tendency to do so. And we had a Black Lives Matter march in Fort Worth. It was like the Boy Scouts. They picked up their freaking garbage. Like it was like the peaceful protest. It was actually a peaceful protest because, well, it's the same reason. Like, where's the most polite place in the world, Fernando?
Yeah.
Gun range. Everybody's freaking nice to each other at a gun range,
Yeah.
No one wants to get shot. Polite. Yeah, and our society is a polite society, right? Like, a response. And to be fair, because we were just talking about like the crazy shit that went on in the Old West, right? A responsible armed society is polite, and that's like I teach my kid, I have my grandkids now, right? I teach my grandkids about gun safety and all, and I have things like I have a pellet. It's a pellet gun, but there's no pellets in the house for it. It's a weird thing, and I have it sitting on the wall. Like leaning against the wall out in the thing because the kids know they're not supposed to touch a gun. That's my test gun.
Yeah.
So if it ever gets touched, right, then somebody's in trouble. But I also know that I have to do some remedial training, right? Because no one's going to get hurt from it. The kid couldn't. It's a pump up one too. He couldn't pump it if he wanted to yet. So
that's a great idea. That's actually something I do myself with my kids.
Put a model or something. It's something that's plugged or something, so nothing can happen. And just if they don't touch it, then they're listening to you. And then my other rule is, you want to see any of my guns? You want to go to the range? You want to do anything? Ask, and we will do it together.
Yeah. I do pretty much the exact same thing. And look, I have, I don't know if it's visible over there, but probably that black thing over there is my maybe it's not that one over there, but it's a Glock air gun. It's a CO2 Glock. So
oh, okay.
So I mean, they know they're not supposed. It looks just like a Glock. It just looks exactly like my Glock, but they know they're not supposed to touch it, and they just don't touch it. And I have, stuff they know they're not supposed to touch. So when it comes to touching stuff like this, they know they're not going to be touching it either way.
Yeah. Or you could do something like this here, right? So this is a black powder pistol. I'm pretty confident that no matter who gets their hands on this, unless they have 209 or unless they have percussion caps, 777 and wadding and ball and know how to load it, it's going to be pretty safe, right?
Yeah. That are you shooting like black powder? Is it something you enjoy?
It's a hobby. It's a hobby, yeah, and it's mainly stuff like this. I don't really do the flintlock thing or anything like that. It's just it's an enjoyable thing, and it's also like it's another skill set, and it's another redundancy, right? If everything else fails, you can still buy this in. I don't know where you are, but where I am, you can order this in the mail.
Yeah.
They will, and you can order everything you need to make it work in the mail. And then this particular model, this is actually kind of cool. It would be a very expensive way to go about it, but you can actually buy a cylinder.
And reload
that will convert this to 45 long Colt. The issue is you actually have to remove the cylinder and put it back in. And what happens is right there where for people watching, there where the percussion caps go, the one that you buy that lets it shoot Colt there's basically a 2-piece thing, and it kind of snaps together, and then it slides back in, and then you can actually center fire 45 Colt. However, reloading would take a bit of time to pull off, right? But you can order all of that in the mail. So I think it's cool to even just know stuff like that. Or like another loophole is the old Turkish Mausers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these, but Turkey had these Mausers back in the 1870s, 1880s. And they're old enough in the U.S. that they're considered an antique. And if there's anybody selling them, like SOG sells them or whatever, you can buy them, and they'll literally mail you a rifle in a box like it was in the 1960s when you could order a shotgun from Sears to your house. Well, in the lead up to I think World War I, maybe it was World War II, the Turks needed new armament because they had these old things with these weird calibers. And they bought these Mausers from Germany. Well, they didn't have the money to buy all new guns. So they sent all their old Mausers to the Germans. They had them rebarreled to 8mm and sent them back. Well, the gun is the receiver. So these are 8mm bolt-action rifles that you can buy in the mail. And I'm not going to say you should try to defend your homestead with an 1893 Turkish Mauser. What I am saying is it's good to know these alternatives, right? That there are other ways to do things because those guns are like $110.
Really? That's
So if you sporterize them, who gives a shit? It's not like when somebody cuts up like a Gustav, 6.5 Swedish Mauser, it's like, oh,
lose your mind.
But if you cut one of those, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, it's true. And as you're saying, it's super interesting to know these sort of things because maybe you live in a place where having something like your 9mm or your Glock or whatever, it's much more of an inconvenience. But you can get a black powder gun, and it is like an antique, but man, it is still shooting very much bullets. So
yeah. Or there's cool things like check these out. These are from a company called Gun Adapters. I don't know if you've ever seen these. This one is a 38 special. It drops into a 12-gauge shotgun. Right. I mean, I wouldn't consider that a home. Actually, that was a 45. That was a 45 ACP. These are it's just fun stuff, but it's also, it's another redundancy. That right there, that little kit right there, that'll take a 12-gauge, let you fire 20, 410, and 22 long rifle. It all fits in that one little, basically elongated film case. I think a lot of this stuff is not hugely practical, but it is fun, and then there is some practicality to it,
Yeah. I think it is, and we start. The point would be if some people get too much into this and they only obsess about, and I guess you've seen this as well.
Yeah.
The only thing you're thinking about, and we were just talking about food, lifestyle, health, and such. You're worried about zombies, and you have 5 layers of redundancy for fighting the end of the world, and you're not looking at what you're eating or your health issues that are a lot more likely to be a problem for you in the immediate future, right now.
It was interesting to watch the Rambo preppers email me a year and a half ago, I guess it was now, and ask me where they could get wheat from. Because when the whole pandemic nonsense, the plandemic kicked off, right? Like all the wheat disappeared. Like it's all of a sudden everybody hit up Honeyville and all like that and ordered all the wheat. And I'm like, do you have a feed store around you? And they're like, what? Like a feed store, like where you go buy food for your chickens and stuff like that. Like, yeah, so call them up and ask them I don't really think you should like go out and buy 500 pounds of wheat right now. But if you really want wheat, instead of being on back order with Honeyville for the next 6 months, call the feed store. And then like another guy was like, well, I don't have a feed store right now. I'm like, you got a homebrew store? He's like, yeah, call them up. Like you get wheat, barley, rye. Like they have all that shit. It wasn't actually in short supply. It was the preppers ran to the prepper sources. Like I had people like freaking out about food. I'm like, you ever heard of a website called Websterant? Like restaurant, but Websterant. They're a restaurant supply house.
Right.
They had you could order as much food as you want shipped to your house. Like there was no shortage. But people didn't know this. But what was interesting is not only didn't they know these alternative ways to get food, they didn't have any food. They're preppers, right? These are people that are in my audience, been in my audience 10 years or more, but they were always the ones, well, I'll just have guns and I'll just take what I want. And I'm like, okay, we are in the middle of the first global disaster that we've seen in the life of any living person. And your gun literally isn't doing shit for you. And that's not negative toward, me, it's not negative toward guns. No. It's just that honestly, like people are out fighting over toilet paper, right? And the police are enforcing lockdowns. But if you go shoot somebody to take their food, they will come get you. Like you're not going to get away with this is not the apocalypse you were preparing for, right?
Yeah, I always love that aspect. One of the many myths in our community, the idea of I just have my guns, so I'll take whatever I want. Okay, good luck with that, and good luck with actually getting into a gunfight with someone that knows how to shoot. You're going to be getting your ass. I always say the same thing. I am not the best shot, but I am somewhat average in my local competition group, so I know everyone that shoots better than I do. If you're not that guy, you're probably screwed. If you think you're gonna be doing much better than I do, so unless you're there with me and doing better in that ranking, there's a good chance you're not as good as you think you are. And there's again people overestimating their capabilities. That would be one of the main. Well,
if you get into kind of like shitstorm that these people are dreaming of in their fantasies, what do you think you're going to take from people?
Yeah.
They don't the average person doesn't have enough food to support themselves for a week. So how long do you think you're going to run around being the road warrior? Not just because somebody that's like got a brain and is armed is going to cap you, because they will. But even if you got lucky and you went into like a neighbor, like how long do you think that's going to last? Like you're talking about a place where there's a shortage and your plan is to steal food from people or resources from people when there's nothing available. I think this is a flawed plan. I really do. Like, this is why we teach a very sane, very slow, very methodical buildup of your preparedness. We teach people, get ready to be prepared to go without any support for 2 weeks. That's stage one. People are like, 2 weeks? That's not a... Shut up. How long are you prepared for now? Like, oh, no, a week. Okay, so you're not at 2 weeks yet. So no matter where we're going to go to, you got to get to 2 weeks first. So you get them to 2 weeks. And they say, I got to 2 weeks. Okay, do it again. What? Do it again. Just do what you did again. Well, they do it, and they come back. Look, now you're good for about a month. Do it again. Okay, now you're good for 2 months. Do a third of what you've done so far. Now you're at 3 months. Okay, 3 months will get most people through most things. Then you decide if you want more than that. But being able to take care of yourself and your family, your medical needs, your food, your shelter, and it's everything. It's money redundancy as well. Like if you can't pay your bills for 3 months and you're buying your next gun, no, wrong answer. Like, I do believe you should be armed. I do should be able to defend yourself. But when you got a guy that has, that you go visit them and they open their gun safe and they've got suppressed tech nines and shit, and you're like, how much food do you have stored? They're like, oh, I got a refrigerator and a pantry. You're like, maybe like, and you start looking at it, you're like, okay, this has never been fired. When did you buy this? It's like 8 years old. Like, I don't want to pick on anybody because it's fun to have a hobby, and I will admit to having a few more than I need, but like, see to your needs first and then your wants second, right? Like, basic.
Or don't lie to yourself. Don't call it preparing or getting ready for survival when you have 20 guns and you don't have a couple of weeks worth of food or
you don't
water.
have a first aid kit. You don't have any water stored up, and then don't make things hard. Like the water one, people are like, well, I have people all the time trying to get me to promote product, right? So like, if you have this water container, I mean, I'm like, you mean a bottle, right? A bottle, right? So I tell people, like, I don't drink like Arizona iced tea, those big jugs, or 2-liter soda bottles or whatever, but somebody who does, right? Yeah. Ask them to save those for you, rinse them out, fill them up with water, throw them in a closet, right? Yeah. And make sure you have and then you can worry about like rain catch, and because we do that, we have like 4 1,550-gallon rain catch cistern tanks. We have a pool, we have ponds, so we have more water redundancy. But I mean, the first thing I ever did when I got into this, or I should say came back to it, because my family, like where I grew up, when we moved to PA, you did these things because if you didn't and shit went wrong in the winter, you were screwed, right? So like, but like, I was like, okay, we need to get water. So just my father-in-law was drinking 4 or 5 jugs of that shit a week. And we just had him save them. And, in no time at all, you've got 200 gallons of water stored. And it's 1 gallon, handle, easy to move around. And if you use it, you just fill it back up and stick it back. And then it's made to hold, like the 2-liter soda bottles are great for this too, because they're made to hold an acidic, under pressure product. So they're strong and they're food grade, right? And it's free. Where one time when we had a bug out location up in Arkansas, like kind of a quick thing, I was like, we'll need some water here. So nothing up here. We went and we bought like 50 gallons of 1-gallon jugs from the grocery. And like, we went back like 6 months later and like half of them had leaked.
Correct. Yeah.
And then I'm like, no more. We have to use pressurized or things that are made to hold, because like an iced tea jug is made to deal with tannic acid, right? So like, again, it's like all these little low-tech, easy things, these little layups that are cheap, and you just stack these into your life until you have redundancy, And then look around at, well, what are your primary threats? Like the pandemic got us all, right? Depending on how stupid our government was. But I'm not exactly that worried about hurricanes because I'm 300 miles inland. If I was in Houston, then some of the things that are specific to hurricanes, I might focus on a little bit more. Right. I worry about tornadoes. We don't want to say exactly where you are right now, but you're probably not that worried about tornadoes with where you're at. When I lived in the Northeast, we get 1 tornado a year within 1,000 miles. So, okay, I'm not worried about tornadoes. Here, we get tornadoes all from like March through July. There's a lot of tornadic activity, so we're worried about that. I'm not worried about flooding. I'm not up on a mountain or anything, but I'm high enough in elevation. If there's flooding, I'm looking for NOAA, right? So like, I'm not, but when I lived down south of here, we lived in a low-lying area. We worried more about flooding. So you do have to take some regional consideration. Like, where are you? What goes on in your country? Like, if you're in Afghanistan right now, you got a problem, right? That's kind of screwed. That's an extreme example, but I mean, like, I don't know. The French are going nuts with the COVID, but it seems like the French citizenry are starting to like roll out some guillotines and shit, right? Yeah. So like, and good for them, but like, even if you agree with the civil disobedience, it's still a problem.
It's still dangerous for you.
It's still dangerous. Like maybe they don't know that you're on their side, right? Maybe you look like an alderman or something. The next thing you know, you're in the guillotine. So like, you gotta think about like, what is the stability, and then understand like your stability, as stable as a place can be. You know this. It can go from. You told me when we first met, before the shit in Argentina, Buenos Aires was the Paris.
Yeah, it was
South America, right? Like
you never would have thought, and it's as you're saying, and people have this idea of, no, this is never going to be happening to me. This will never happen to me. It's It happens. Shit happens. It's just life, and it may be anything. It may be something very localized in your we're just talking about flaws. I was living in Northern Ireland at that time, and before moving to that specific place, because sometimes it's sometimes the prepping you do is if I'm going to Afghanistan, it's a shit show of a country. So I have a whole of it's a generalized problem, localized, but sometimes it's very specific. So when I was going exactly to where I would be ending up in, I somehow found online like old flawed maps going 100 years back, and I looked at those and said, okay, anywhere that there was ever flawed problems, I'm not touching. Couple years later, flaws here and there, and I'm in the exact zone that's never that wasn't flooded because it had never been flooded before. It's high enough, and so if it hasn't happened in 100 years, it's kind of unlikely that it will happen.
Or if you have flooding, you have like flooding, not get the boat out, climb on the roof, and hope the Cajun Navy comes and gets you or what have you, right? Like, yeah, definitely.
But sometimes you plan this. And neighbors or people, someone living, this was a very specific map. So maybe a couple blocks down the street, that guy got flooded, and he looks at you as, you got lucky. No, I just did my homework much better than you did, my friend. That's the only difference. That's the only difference here.
Yeah, and you can't figure that out without doing, like you're talking about, looking at maps. When I was a kid in Pennsylvania, there was a park we used to go to called Noble's Grove, and there was a huge flood in the area in 1976, and there was a sign on a tree, and that sign had a line on it, and that line was the height of the floodwaters. And this place looks it doesn't look low. It doesn't look like a valley. And I don't remember, because you're a kid, your size has changed. But I'm talking like 12, and I remember that I had to reach up to touch the sign. Right, that's flooding. Like this is a puddle. That's a flood.
Talking about several yards of water above your head. Like your 2-story house. Having water on the top level as well. That's flawed.
Well, and so Houston's been through tons of storms, but Harvey flooded the city. Yeah. Not an area, like Harvey flooded the city, and it was like a weird thing. Like that storm kind of like it came in and it stalled, and it kind of like actually backed up a little bit, and it sat there for like 3 days before it moved out. So like things can happen that even historically don't. Like it was like 88 inches of rain or something crazy like that it dumped. If you look at it, also like the Black Lives Matter riots, right? Like, so when Minneapolis blew up, Portland blew up, Seattle blew up, of course, LA, San Fran, whatever. Well, okay. And then, but Kenosha? I mean, I know a lot of people are saying Kenosha has I think 70,000 people. And that's including the areas that aren't really Kenosha, right? Like, I was in Kenosha back in the 80s, and it was like small town America. It was like typical kind of Rust Belt, small town, northeastern, normal, everyday, salt of the earth Americana. And so when the Kenosha blew up, I was like, and I'm not even talking about Rittenhouse, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Kenosha burning to the ground. Take Kyle Rittenhouse out, and still so I'm guaranteeing you the average Kenosian, even when the riots started, was like, oh, well, it's Kenosha. Okay, well, yeah, there you go. Like we need to realize the world we lived in, the world our parents brought us up in, is gone. We are in one of the most unstable times in history right now. And I'm not a doom and gloom, preacher man type prepper.
I mean, I've known you for many years, and you're not the doomer guy. You're always pretty upbeat, positive.
I mean, my thing is basically, it's not that everybody's going to be screwed, but somebody's going to be screwed, and it might be you, right? Like that's how you have to look at this. I talk about the people use in our world, they say the shit hits the fan, right? And what I've tried to teach since 2008 when I started this is the shit hits the fan for somebody every day. Yeah. And probably in your area, like in your state or your city or your county, because when you come home and your wife's sitting there with her face in her hands and tells you she has cancer, the shit has hit the fan for you. And if you've managed your life the way we teach, even as bad as that is, you will be better off than if you had not.
Yeah.
When you go home and you say, I got fired today.
Yeah.
The shit hits the fan. When a tornado comes through, rips the roof off your house, even if everybody's alive, the shit has hit the fan for you. And I've always taught that actually we need to prepare for that. And then COVID came and broke it all. Like I do this thing that I call disaster probability. And the less people affected by a disaster, the more likely you are to experience that disaster in your life. And then COVID broke it. I used to be able to give presentations. It's like, who's seen a global disaster? And everybody sat there like, shit, he's right. Now they're all like, aha. But, okay, you've seen one global disaster. And most people have had multiple job losses, multiple injuries. Like, these things happen on, like, has your power ever gone out? Okay, great. Like, that sucks. But if your power goes out for a day, it's not that big a deal. Let's say that you get a deep freezer and you stock it with meat, and you have your regular freezer stocked with meat, and you don't have a generator, the power goes off for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
What's the financial loss of that? That like a $700 generator and gas that I think you have to look at is free relative to the cost for preparedness to ensure that investment doesn't go south. Because, and the way I say it's free is, so if I buy gas, and what I do, I teach people do it as fast as you can, but if it takes 1 can a month, 1 5-gallon can a month, buy a gas can, fill it up, whatever month it is, write that number. So August, you'd write an 8. And keep doing it till you have 12 cans of gas. So just keep them in a row wherever you store your gas, 1 through 12. When August comes back around, dump the gas in your car. And next time you fill your car up, take the can, fill it back up, put it back in the spot. October, do every month. Just keep doing that. You always rotate. None of your gas is ever more than a year old. So that gas, you're going to buy it anyway. Right? You're going to buy it anyway. It doesn't matter. And now I just learned from a listener, and I'm getting this set up at my place. A lot of places that are a little bit more rural, in the States anyway, you can call up like local ag supply or whatever, petroleum supply for ag. They will come out.
Fill you up.
What they'll do is they'll give it to you, a 500-gallon tank with the pump, like your own little mini gas station. But you sign a contract that they come out once a month and fill it up, and you buy all your gas from them. But they'll give you the tank. So now you have 500 gallons of fuel. And I'm like, can you get one on legs? And they're like, yeah, because if you get it on legs, you don't even need a pump. You got gravity. But then the guy got on him. He's like, what you should do, run a power circuit from your shop out to the tank. Okay. Don't put it on legs, and have backup power anyway. Right. I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. That way, when you're not using it, you shut it off. If one of your neighbors breaks in or something to steal the gas, it won't come out.
Yeah. Good idea.
Like, cause gravity, it'll come out. Right.
Right. That's a great tip, because you don't have to buy the container. You just you just rent it out or whatever. It's
500-gallon commercial grade fuel tank, free if you sign. You also have to pay for 500 gallons worth of gas when you do it. Like, correct. You have to fill it up. And the one guy I talked to, he said, if you because we don't use a lot of gas, right? I bought my Challenger like a year ago, and I have 1,800 miles on it. Right? And then my wife drives for the kids and all. My wife probably drives 8,000 miles a year. So, and then we have a lawn tractor and all. I'm like, we might only use like 25 gallons a month or so. He's like, you can let us know. We'll come every other month. And I'm like, okay, done. And you'll pay more than you do at the pump, but it's like 15 cents a gallon more. Like the convenience alone and the security of having that there. And if you had to buy that tank, how long would it take that 15 cents to pay for that? Because that's, it's like $1,000 gas tank. Right. So to me, it's the no-brainer.
On diesel, using, because I like diesel quite a bit. I think it's, pretty, it runs longer in your car. It just stores better. Have you considered going with diesel, or is just?
I had a Ford diesel truck, and it's actually still sitting out. It's got problems, and I'm doing the math on whether it's worth fixing it or not at this point. Right. But our other vehicles are gas. I used to be all diesel. I had 2 diesel trucks, and I had a diesel Jetta, and I like diesel. I was a diesel mechanic in the Army, so I have a lot of experience with diesel equipment, but greater availability, I guess. I mean, it depends, like
it's not as popular, right? In the United States, you don't have diesel like every.
Europe has a lot of passenger cars that are diesel. Like, like the only one here really is some of the Volkswagens, the Jetta, the Passat, etc. They have the TDI options. Right. Here, it's very unusual, and I'm in my sports car phase. I can afford to spoil myself now, and we don't make diesel sports cars.
Look here, all across Europe, I think every single gas station has
diesel,
gasoline and diesel pump, one next to the other. I mean, you can easily confuse one with the other.
And here in Texas, here in Texas, it's not hard. You'll have most big stations will have 2 diesel pumps. Some will have that serve the truckers. They'll have the big giant islands and all. But a lot of your little convenience store gas stations and all, they don't. They just have gas.
Here it's every single one because half the cars out there, they're all diesel. And you have diesel little cars. You have diesel bigger trucks, SUVs. You have luxury Porsche diesel, So it's all over the place. And one of the big advantages, it has a lot more torque. So even with, I have a Honda CRV, a little Honda CRV car.
In diesel?
Diesel, yes.
Oh, badass.
Yeah, and the thing has double the torque that it has any right to have because it's diesel. So you're going uphill, you put it in first, and it's manual. So you put it in first gear, and it goes. That's pretty awesome. It actually got me out of a crappy situation with a kind of it wasn't exactly like a flash flood because I wasn't in any risk, but it was an important amount of water. The street I was in became a little bit of a river at some point, and it had water pouring over the hood of the car. The car couldn't give a damn less. It just went on through as if nothing. I think that with a small sedan, maybe I would have been a bit more screwed there. Yeah, but it's nice. Diesels are pretty cool.
Yeah, and it definitely does have a longer shelf life for the fuel. To me, if you're rotating your fuel, it's not as big an issue. That's why I like the 12 gas can model. That's 60 gallons of fuel. You have a jet, and I believe you should have a good size, mid-size, 5,000 to 10,000 K generator. And then you should have probably a smaller generator as 2 is 1, 1 is none. And if you have that and you have 60 gallons of fuel, man, you're going to get through most things. We had the big ice storm, and the big freeze here in Texas. And of course that made major news. And it was we were 5 days without power. It wasn't that big a deal for me. I mean, we just fired the generator up. I kept the lights on in the well house so that the well didn't freeze up. And that was hopefully that was a once in a century event here. I mean, we had, I think it was 9 days where we didn't go above freezing. Now, there's a lot of places that are so what? That's winter. That's how, not here. Yeah, that's not a thing. And I'm not saying 9 days where it was below freeze. I'm saying 9 days where the high was below freezing. We had 4 consecutive days where it didn't get to 2 digits. There's a 65,000 acre lake just south of me. It froze over. That does not happen here. And people were caught so off guard.
People were caught with their pants out because they're not used to that sort of thing. Right?
And then they all want to know how to prepare. In the middle of a disaster, it's you just need to worry about getting through this. Then we can talk. And it was same thing with COVID. I'm sure with, you doing what you do, all of a sudden I was having all these people, media, other podcasters that are not preparedness. Yeah. They wanted me to come on and they wanted me to talk about COVID. And I'm thinking oh, so you want me to talk about how to deal with COVID? No, they want to talk about basic preparedness. And I'm well, you're kind of screwed right now. You got to get through this. And then as things normalize, here's the path. But I was everything I'm about to say is going to be really simple to do, except not right now, and people would get mad. And it's I don't know, man, me and dozens of other people have been saying this for 20 years. And they made stupid TV shows like that Doomsday Prepper and all. And this is not what we do. That's not us. And I don't know if you've watched that at all, but I know some of the people, I'm sure you do too, that were on that show. And I'm they are not the person on that show. And it's they sold their soul for 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, because even for free, they do it. They just do it just to be on TV. And I think that, I mean, on one hand, I would admit that some people got interested in what we do because of that.
I agree.
That would be the plus side. On the other hand, you have people that have our complete. First of all, they think you're all crazy lunatics, that we're all out of our freaking minds. and that's not the case. And then it sent a lot of people on the wrong path. Like, I'm preparing for the end of the world and this and this all. And it was not practical. It's not realistic. I got contacted by, I think it was one of the first runs they did of Doomsday Prepper. And I was still in Argentina. So it was a long time ago. And they were like, so what are you preparing for? And because they wanted to have like the punchline of, Jack is preparing for a solar flare that will destroy. So they wanted me to. So they wanted me to go like, Fernando is preparing for an economic collapse, and it was like, no, it already happened here. And they were like, and the woman was like, oh. So
my best preps. I remember you. You're like, my best preps were like $5,000 a passport and a Glock. Right, like that's the preparedness, right? You get the hell out, like when this stuff goes sideways. Yeah, those same people. The one that we met at in Utah, I thought my sweet wife, who is just like the most, I thought she was going to punch one of the producers in the face because this girl that was part of the Doomsday Prepper thing came to me and said, "So we're coming to your place." Yeah, and I said, "No, you're not." Yeah.
But they want to show this stuff.
She said, as though this would change my mind, she said, but your wife said we could come. And Dorothy flipped. She's like, I did not say that. Like, I thought she was going to get a beat down right there, And like, I was torn between, like, do I encourage this or do I stop it? And my wife said, I said that you could talk to him about it. And they lied, they're connivers, and they did it right in front of her. So imagine what they do behind your back. And then that same expo, not the same location, but the same organizer, had one in Denver I was at. And we had a dinner with some of the key people. And he invited the main executive producer for Doomsday Preppers to that dinner. This man told me to my face, well, I don't have integrity. In my business, I can't afford to have integrity. I get fired for having integrity. And I'm like, and you wonder why, like, because none of us that were legit would work with them. Like, all of us you got badgered, I got badgered. I'm like, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't need you guys. Like, think of the exposure. I'm like, so I look like an idiot? Yeah. I'm going to be like the guy that you had up in the deer blind that shot, and the other guy's ears are like, he's going to like, I don't know if I can trust him anymore. He took a shot at a deer out of a deer blind. Like, they made something out of nothing. The guy that put his kids in the gas mask with the pool in Arizona, I know that guy. That guy's not nuts. But they basically said, if you want to be on TV, you got to pretend to be nuts, I call it non-reality TV.
Yeah, it's not realistic. Look, one of the things that I don't even remember which one it was. What are we going to be finding if we go to your house? You're going to be having like crazy stuff. It was, my house is the most normal place in the world. You're not going to be finding anything weird or unusual. And they were like, okay, but you have the gun stuff they liked, Okay, can you show us like guns and bring out guns and look like a complete idiot? I was, well, with some people from Vice TV, some of these people, they were, no, we're going to be doing this very serious and such and such and such. And they were all already, they were all ready to come to Argentina back then. And they said, okay, well, we just need you to sign this. I mean, this was like a week before. They probably had the damn tickets already. So they were like, they had the ticket. I mean, I'm not even.
That makes me happy you told them to go screw.
No, they had the tickets and they wanted, okay, you just have to sign this. And I read it and it was, I was basically giving up anything that I would do in the future that would be related in any way to preparedness or anything related to the show. And my wife, she's a lawyer. So I gave her the disclaimer thing that I was supposed to sign. And she was, I mean, if you sign this, you're a complete moron. You're giving up anything you'll do in the future or ever for the rest of your life. And I got back to them and, if you want to come here, but I cannot sign this for you.
Sign this crap, yeah.
There's no way. And she was, oh, we never use that. Okay, if you don't use it,
then you don't need it.
Right.
Then you don't need it.
But she said, if you don't sign it, we cannot do it. Okay, then you're not doing it because I'm not. I mean, I had my book coming up. How on earth am I going to be signing away rights to everything I'll ever do related to survival and preparedness?
And there's other problems, right? There's other problems that can come from getting involved with those types of things. There was some really big fat dude was like from Kentucky or Tennessee or something. And he was on that and he had a bunch of guns and all. And he was like, dude, your preparedness needs to be, you need a Stairmaster, right? Like this guy was going to die of being over. But he ended up getting like all his guns seized.
Yeah.
because of something he said or did, or they got him to do or whatever.
They just talk and they start threatening, or they were going to be doing this, that, and someone shows up. This guy is dangerous for himself and others. You're making our way no matter what. So
because what they'll do is they'll do shit in the background, like, what would you do here? Well, I would do this. What would you do there? And they'll keep egging you on until they're like, what if there were 27 people outside armed trying to take your property? Well, I'll shoot their ass. And then they go, well, and then all you see as a viewer is, well, what would you do if somebody threatened you? I'll shoot their ass. And that's how they do that.
Yeah.
The girl that said she would eat her cat, I know her too. And they basically kept taking this to the point of like, there's nothing left. Right. There's nothing left. Your cat's going to die anyway. She's like, yeah, I would eat the cat. And then they took it and they did exactly what I'm saying. They were like, so what if something really went wrong and food was short? Well, if I had to, I'd eat the cat.
Right.
And like, this is dumb. How long do you think you're going to survive off of a cat? Like, I guess we've digressed a little bit.
I mean,
but yeah.
People have to understand that is not, there's nothing real about any reality TV show. It's all TV. It's all for entertaining.
There's nothing real on TV anymore at all. I mean, if you have any trust in the media after the last 19 months, then you just need to quit. You failed as a human. Like, I hate to be that severe, but if you trust the media after what you've witnessed with this pandemic crap, then you failed as a person. Like you're not a person. You're basically an automaton. You're like a drone of the state. And I'm not, you're not going to, if you guys come check me out, from Fernando's side, you're not going to hear me talking about the Illuminati or anything like that. No, but this whole thing is just, it's too much. It's too tempting to seize too much power for them not to do it. And this is a fascist country, and most countries today are fascist countries. Yeah. When you have government and private industry working together economically and coordinating with each other, that's fascism. One of the worst things we've done to our children, and they did it to my generation too, I just woke up, is we've conditioned people. If I say Nazi or I say fascist, you think Hitler, you think Jews, and you think gassing people. Okay, I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists saying that shit didn't happen. That shit happened. I'm not saying Hitler wasn't a Nazi or a fascist. What I'm saying is that's not the only form of fascism. Right? Yeah. Franco in Spain was fascist. As far as I know, there were no, concentration camps or anything in Spain. I don't really know the whole history of the time, but it wasn't anything like that, and it was still fascism. It was just overt fascism. What we have today is neo-fascism, right? So people throw around words like neoconservative or whatever. I don't even know what it means. Neo means new. That's it. So, like, remember the movie The Matrix? The dude's name is Neo. So the third, where you find out it all starts over again, they gave you the answer in the first movie. Neo means new, right? So this is new fascism. It's basically, so classic fascism was that the government was able to dole out money to the industry, and then it was this relationship, government here, industry here, and this unholy cabal. And what we have with neo-fascism is the government's here and the industry's here.
Yeah, it's still
fascism, right? And so you can't trust your media. And it's not that everything the media says is a lie, because you sell a lie with the truth. Like the 5-minute wrong clock is more dangerous than the 4-hour wrong clock. Yeah, But what you have to do is you have to assume until you verify that anything that comes out of the mouth of any of these people, I don't care what channel it is a lie. And if it turns out to be true and you verify it, then you use that truth to make a decision. But if you just listen to it and assume, they gave me no, congratulations, the fluoride worked. Right? Like that's what that means. Like you need to start filtering your fluoride and you need to turn, like, I think most people would be better suited for the next 30 days. If you haven't ever done this in your life, turn the TV off. Yeah. Get off social media. And I'm not opposed to social media. Like if you're going to listen to stuff, listen to podcasts like mine and listen to Fernando or whatever. Right. But like tune out to the geopolitics. The world won't stop because you stop listening. And you'll actually begin to mentally, emotionally, spiritually heal. Yeah. Because most people are deeply damaged at this point. There's basically it's Stockholm syndrome. Like the state is your keeper and you've been psychologically abused since you were a child. and you now identify with your captor. And I know that sounds like batshit crazy, but man, everybody that takes me up on the like 30 days without the media challenge is like, what they say is I didn't even know how well it worked until I turned it back on. And it's like, you like all of a sudden you feel like there's a war going on out your window. Like that's how you're like, oh my God. Like when I was in Florida the first year of the pandemic, so I guess 2020, that's when like all the cases kind of took off there. But Florida was free and we were at the beach and we're hanging out. And I went up to my hotel room and my wife had been there, flipped through the channels, and she left it on MSNBC. So I walk in and the news is on and they're talking about Florida. And I'm literally like, I'm looking at the screen and I'm looking out the window and I'm looking at the screen and I'm like, what are they? And it sounded like it was like Beirut, Iraq, and a pandemic all at once. And I'm looking at like little girls flying her kite and shit. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, and then
they do that. They trick you into thinking everything is horrible and we're all about to, look, it's you have to know.
But in the local Florida stations, you know what they were talking about? How bad Texas was. Yeah. That's the trick. They always tell you about a place not where you are. So like, man, you should see what it's like in Texas. Like our family up in New York and whatnot, when they talk to us, like, well, it's really bad down there, isn't it? No. You guys know more if you died than us, right? You know, like you had Governor kill grandma up there. Like, no, like, well, it's not that bad here. I know it's not that bad, but it is worse.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't understand. It's like, so you guys just go places? Yeah. You don't wear masks? No. So you can just go to a restaurant. And they're like, to them, that's now strange. That we can just go to a restaurant and have fish tacos. Like that's insane to them, you know? And that to me is a damaged psyche. Like my niece, when she went to Florida with her boyfriend and they went to Disneyland, she was like, it was weird. People were walking around. It was so not normal. People were just walking around without masks on. I'm like, honey, really? Think about what you just said.
Walking around.
You think that's weird and being masked up when you're outside in the sunshine is normal. Like this is what happened to you in 6 months. They did this to you. And it's very hard for people to understand that like they're not on your side. They're not trying to take care of you. They do not care about you. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like people are blown away by what's going on in Afghanistan, Fernando. Are you? I'm not. Of course they did. They're just leaving America stranded. We do that all the time. It's just now it's all in one place at one time and everybody can see it. That's the only difference. Parents being like totally pissed off about the way their kids are being taught in school with this distance learning. Like distance learning is the problem. Distance learning is not the problem. You got to see what they've been teaching your kids for the last 20 years, and now you see it. Yeah. That's the problem. It's not distance learning is bad. My grandkids are distance learning through a private school. It's fantastic. Incredible teachers, incredible material, right? It's amazing, but we're paying extra for it because it's worth it to take care of them. I'm not sending my grandkids to the state school right now. I'm not doing it. It's not happening. And more people are doing that. It's something like, I think it's like 7 million people are now identifying not as schooling at home, but homeschoolers, 7 million more than before this started. And it's only because they saw the truth, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. It's, the school thing is terrible because they've gone down like a path of when, as you were saying, when parents finally saw what their teachers were telling their kids, they realize how uneducated they are. They're incapable of teaching anything themselves. They're complete morons. And the content, I mean, the kind of stuff they wanted to get into your kid's head, it's pure poison. Because it's geared entirely. I mean, and people are surprised now about the Afghanistan. Look what's been happening with the military over the years. So it's the entire government. And one of the things that's very characteristic of the United States is, you know, the adoration towards the military people. You know, if you are serving, if you know, thank you for your service. This though can be quite dangerous when you don't keep that in perspective because, you know, Hugo Chavez has soldiers as well. The North Korean asshole has soldiers as well. Are those guys heroes? Are you going to be thanking those assholes for their service? No, you're not. So
who's enforcing martial law in Australia right now?
Yeah, of course.
Right? And I guarantee you, if you told the average Aussie 3 years ago that they will lock you up over a cold, and your military will roll tanks in the streets to keep you at home, they would have said, not our boys. They never do that.
Yeah. They follow orders.
They follow orders. Like, and it takes, I'm not saying there are not times when militaries end up being the hero and they stand up and they say, no, it is not the rule. It is the exception. And what I don't know if you know what's going on in the States right now. They're purging our military, and it's not just the woke shit like that you're seeing publicly. So what's going on is like senior NCOs, field grade officers and stuff, they're being drugged into these meetings and they're being told, whether it's actually happening or not, we're going to comb through all your social media. And if there's anything that makes you an extremist, we're going to put you out of the military. These are guys with 20, 23, 24 years.
Yeah,
right?
Purged, as you said.
So they're not actually throwing them out. What they're doing is they're so scaring them. You know, they're like, I said, like 23 years, maybe he was going to do 30, but he can retire. They're just like, I'm done. So you're getting rid of your E7s, your E8s, right? You're getting rid of your colonels and your light colonels, right? These are the people that actually, like, generals don't run the army and privates don't run the army. It's your anybody that's ever served knows it's your senior NCOs, your E6s, E7, E8s, somewhat your masters, you know, your E9s, your sergeant majors, and it's your field grade officers, you know, your colonels, your light colonels, your majors that are that leadership core. And I would say even your captains in the Army, and then you got your other weird ranks in the Navy where captains are actually colonels or whatever. Like, but it's those guys. I had a guy just moved about a mile away from us. They buy duck eggs from us. He's a Navy captain, which is like a colonel in the Army, and he's got 26 years, and he's like, they're going to throw me out. And what got me, Fernando, was every one of these men totally emotionally defeated.
Yeah.
And I've not seen one actually. They've told them things like, if you have a heavily pro Second Amendment post on Facebook, that's might be enough.
Constitution,
right? Like, and it's like, yeah, exactly. You mean the Constitution that I took an oath to when I entered service? You mean that?
You know what they mean. You know what they mean.
Yeah, like even Trump supporting, like when all this shit started, could be like, and these guys are thinking, I've got like hundreds of things like that. Like they're gonna get me, so they leave. Because if they fire one, you're gonna get one of these ambulance chasing lawyers, and that guy's gonna be flying a freaking F-35, right? Like they can't do it legally, but they can go at them in a way where they're just like, fuck it, I'm out. And that's what's happening. And that's very scary, because what you're going to be left with is your top brass assholes, your lower people that don't know any better, and your top lower people, they'll just move those into that new position and say, now this is how things are. And next thing you know, you've got a military in the United States like you have in Australia, where they'll roll tanks in the middle of a street because you took your dog for a walk the wrong way or some shit. And can't happen here. Those are famous last words, bro. You know that.
Isn't it already... I don't know if it's too late, but this has been going on for a while. There was a meme about this is why we lost in Afghanistan, and it was like it was all the gay, trans, and all the weird stuff, all the confusing stuff. Where you look at it, and is that a guy? Is that all the ones from Air Force, Army? So it was a collection of all those, and you kind of get it. Like it's not anymore about fighting wars. It's about being woke enough and signaling your wokeness towards others, or the Cindy has two moms. I don't know. You probably saw the advertisement.
Oh, the advertisement, and have you seen it where they compare it to like recruiting ads for Russia and China? We look like morons. Like the Russians, the Chinese look badass, but the Russians are like, I'm like, well, maybe I want to join the Russian army. That's like the army I was part of 25 years ago. Like, like that. Yeah, jumping out of airplanes and shit. Yeah, bring it on. Like, I'll go back and do that. Yeah, my knee's fucked up, but I'll go back and do that again. And I like the one is like this corporal that like she has two mothers or whatever.
Yeah, the Russians was badass. It's true. You look at it, and people with our mentality. We look at it, and people with our mentality, you want to join because that's cool. Shooting guns, being involved in all of this, and all of a sudden you have Amy has two moms, and you look at it, no, I don't want to be part of that.
I don't care if Amy has two moms. Let me be clear. Like, I'm a pure libertarian. I think everybody should be able to do whatever they want. But I also don't think that, like, military service should be a pathway to getting your gender reassignment surgery for $200,000 paid for. I really don't think that's the purpose. The purpose of a military, whether you're for it or against it, I don't care. But the purpose of a military is to make other people dead. Yeah, and you only do it when you need to because you're defending your country. That's what it's supposed to be. And if the military is not designed to make other people dead, you don't have a military. You have a job, right? And I don't care if you're a cook. I don't care if you're a supply sergeant. I don't care what you are. Your job is to help make other people dead.
That's the final objective.
So maybe you're not the one doing it, but the supplies that you're logistically getting to go places are so the infantry can make people dead. If you're in supply in the Air Force, it's so some pilot with an F-35 can burn somebody on the ground. Like, that's the purpose of the military. If you're not comfortable with that, don't go in the military. And all these people, I guarantee you, they're not comfortable with that, right? They don't want to hear that. Like, and it's a very scary time because we still have this incredible, like, our military is still incredibly capable. Right. And I don't mean necessarily against the Russian Sveknok, but against, like, people in the streets in our own country. Yeah. Right. If you don't have to be that badass to jump in an MRAP, right, and deal with a bunch of unarmed protesters or even lightly armed protesters. Right. Like, I mean, like, it's a very dangerous thing. And if you end up with a twisted, corrupt military that will turn on its own people, and I don't even mean like Australia, I mean like totally, completely mentally defunct, which is what they're building here. That terrifies the hell out of me. The only thing that gives me hope is we are an armed society, right? Like when Hugo Chavez sends his military, like, what are people going to do, right? You try that shit here, and, like, we also have millions of prior service military in our communities, and those guys know how to organize people and whatever. And even if it never happens, our government is acutely aware that it could. Right. They understand that it could. So when they talk about extremism, what they're actually talking about is people that won't let them do whatever they want. That's what extremism actually means to these people. Yeah.
Yeah. They are already on that path. I think, and as you were saying before, neither yourself and me, we've never been the doomer type of prepper or, doomer type of survivor. We've always been, the glass is always pretty damn full. We've always been that. We've never, but I see it as you're saying, they're looking to recruit certain type of people. That is quite clear. They're certainly looking to recruit certain type of people, and they're looking to make the enemy out of other groups of people like ourselves. They want to go after, and they've said this time and again. The white conservative is worse than ISIS. And when I heard that for the first time, I was, what the hell are you talking about? Are you crazy? And this was not some drunk asshole. This was not some lunatic.
This is now national policy. It's now national policy. It's government policy. Like, you have the head of the Department of Defense saying that he's more concerned about white rage, whatever the hell that is.
What the fuck is
right? I'm white. I have rage, but it's not the kind you're talking about. Like, I have rage against you.
I'm Latin. Right? Do I get a free pass?
No, you're not brown enough to be brown, right? And then we have this weird thing where, like, the only appropriate position to have in the United States now, according to all this crap, if you're white, is to hate yourself, and then you're okay, right? And this is incredibly dangerous for a society. I feel like this is coordinated national suicide. And I will sound conspiratorial here, but I don't. And I would have told you were crazy if you said this 5 years ago, right?
I would as well, yes.
But looking at this and seeing what they're doing, I don't have another explanation. I feel that they want full globalism. The biggest obstruction to globalism in the world is the United States. We're too strong. We're too capable. We're too independent. We're too free. And you cannot get globalism if you don't bring the U.S. into it. So you have to break the U.S. to get the U.S. to capitulate into full-on globalism, and then most of the rest of the world is ready to do it. They want to do it. Like, I remember years and years ago, this had nothing to do with preparedness or anything. I had this little website. Yeah. It was a personal website. It had nothing to do with any of this stuff. And it had on it, like, this is back when, like, this is really early internet. This is like 90s, right? And so, like, you got all these little things you would cut and paste, and, like, so a guest book, like, there was sites that would do stuff, like, cut this guest book, and it's like customize your guest book link. And I'm from Texas, so I did this thing. It was like a state of Texas, and it had the state looked like the flag of Texas, so it had red, white, and the star and all. And I got this email from this chick in Europe that was telling me how dangerous, like, that was, that, you know, that you would identify as where you're from, and, like, national pride, and, like, how awful this was. And I was like, what the hell? And I started talking to some people about, like, no, this is normal. This is, a lot of Europeans think this way. And again, this is the 90s. And this was a stupid little thing, like to sign a guest book that you visited the site. It wasn't even like, it wasn't presented that way. This was about an author that wasn't in any of this space at all. It was just like, I was learning how to make websites, and it was just fun. And this chick was freaked out about how dangerous this was. And this was right about the time Europe was coming together under the EU. And so they had this brainwashing going there. And I see that going on here now. And I don't know. I also look at it like, do you know how many years it was after Russia pulled out of Afghanistan that the Soviet Union collapsed?
20 years?
2 years. 2 years. It was 2 years. And I don't know. I look at, like, Florida, I look at Texas, and I look at how some of the other states are starting to wake up to, like, you know, hey, maybe this is dumb, except Louisiana seems to, like, I don't know. They seem to think they're New York or something. And I just wonder.
You see that happen in the future. You see it happen, like, breaking apart. I
see maybe there's like it starts out as a coalition of the states with nullification amendments. And then if things go against them, like if the courts rule you can't do this, which will be a clear violation of the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, okay, then what do those states do? Okay, we used the remedy that we have constitutionally. We followed the book. We went it by the letter. We did what we were supposed to do. And we stayed within the bounds of what we can do. And you've said no. And what that makes me think of is a Continental Congress and letters to the King of England, right? The founding fathers of the United States did not want the revolution. A few of them did. Like Sam Adams was like, but most of them were like, we want to avoid this. And they did everything. Like, we need some acknowledgement that we matter. And the king basically was like, probably because his mind was half eaten with syphilis. They didn't know that at the time, but like just say, screw you. We'll do whatever we want. And so eventually what it makes me think of is like when you go to a concert or something, the guy's getting the mic ready and they're trying to get it ready and they get things too close and you get that piercing feedback noise, like when that happens in real life, that kind of audio feedback to where nothing we do matters anymore. Well, then you get, you know what, then I guess we're not doing this anymore. And we live under this false assumption because of what went on with the Civil War, the war between the states in the 1860s here, that secession is unconstitutional or what have you. There's nothing in the Constitution that prohibits a state from deciding we don't want to do this anymore, that we don't want to be part of this union anymore. And this is something that I have this. Can
a state pull a part of the union? Is that something
they would do it by declaring it, right? And then you have to argue about how do you say I can't leave, right? Are we going to fight? Are we going to have a war? Right. Is a war between the state of Texas and the United States of America? Can that politically survive in the world in 2021, 2022, 2025, whatever? Like, it's not 1860 anymore. Like, that's not necessarily something you can do. Texas has it's like the 8th largest military in the world, by the way, with our National Guard, our Air Guard, et cetera. Plus, we have a tremendous amount of U.S. military assets inside Texas, which I guess you would say, oh, well, if you didn't get them out, I guess it's ours now, right? Like, how would that work? I don't know. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says a state cannot leave the Union. That doesn't exist, right? And again, so one of the things I've had like this intellectual conversation with people, it's very difficult for them to understand. The federal government is not party to the Constitution because the federal government didn't exist when the Constitution was established. The Constitution established the federal government. The Constitution of the United States is a contract between the states and their people. That's what it is. And I'm an anarchist, so I'm not necessarily making the case that this is the way this should work. I'm just telling you how it works under their rules, right? Because if you and me and like one other guy decide we want to start a company, right? The company becomes an entity when we form it, but the contract that forms the company is not between us and the company. We create the company when we enter into the articles of incorporation, right? So we created this country from states that had sovereignty by agreeing together to this contract. There was no exit clause included in the contract, but there was no exclusion of an exit clause, right? There is no place in the Constitution that says you cannot do this. There's no place where it says here's the procedure for doing this. So it has ambiguity. Well, under common law, any ambiguity in a contract would benefit the party that didn't draft it. That's all contract law across the board, right? So who's the party that didn't draft it? Well, everybody's dead, but who actually drafted it was the states. So the two parties are the states, or two classes of parties. You have the states and the people. Any ambiguity in our Constitution by common law should benefit the people, not the states, because we didn't write the contract. So if you and I have a contract to do business together, this is what I mean. And I draft the contract, you agree to the contract, and there's a clause in that contract that could be interpreted one or two ways, right? But I wrote it. A judge would side with you in a civil disagreement because he would say you benefit from the ambiguity because I had the opportunity when I drafted it to be abundantly clear. And however you wish to interpret it, as long as it's reasonable, you win in that dispute. So when they say something about the Second Amendment, the people should benefit from the ambiguity. If there's any ambiguity, the people should benefit. And we should be teaching kids this in school. We don't. Yeah,
but why?
I didn't learn this in school.
Why teach this when you can teach them that you can be a boy or a girl depending on how you feel that specific day? That it's much more useful for kids.
Yeah.
But, talking about because I watched this, for example, when UK left the European Union. There's a specific article so as to leave the European Union because it's always fully sovereign states that are part of the European Union. Now, in the case of the United States,
a lot more clean because they have an exit clause, right?
Right. You don't like it. You
we
just
don't have one,
that.
But we don't have the exclusion. Like that's what I'm saying. There's no place where it says a state may not leave the union. That's not in the contract, and the contract says what it says, and it doesn't say what it doesn't say. But when it says
like shared, the shared sovereignty aspect. Yeah. When you have a shared sovereignty, then you're not a fully sovereign state.
Yeah, and we're not. We are member states within a federal republic, right? But again, there's nothing that says we can't. And again, even if it did, so let's say that Florida decides they're out of here, and let's say Georgia says, "Hey, we want in on this," and you get this coalition, this group, kind of like
Southern belt of
like we all go and we leave Louisiana Island. You can be whatever you want to be, right? You're gonna have a lot of people in Louisiana pissed at me. It's New Orleans is the problem, right? But they all say we're out of here.
Yeah.
Well, what do you see what I'm saying? It's not as simple as saying, well, you can't, like a court decision. So, like if states actually step up and do this, well, they're already saying we're not listening to the courts. I think it would take failure within the court system. Because I don't see, there's this whole mystique around Texas will secede, right?
Yeah, always has been.
And I think there's an underlying current that's legitimate, but I think the average rational Texan would feel like if we didn't do everything that we could first to assert our independence within the framework of being part of the union, that it's not tenable to secede from the union. I think we would have to basically say we're standing on the 9th and 10th Amendments. We're doing these things. And then you do them, and then you're told you can't do them. And I think then, I'd say there's probably a third of the state right now that would do it. So you only need to win over another third. I'd say you got to have a good 65% to do that. It's not like 51% can't do it. England, right? They could because they had a clause to do it.
It was super clean. I mean, that was also very interesting to watch because it was so manipulated by the media. You have to keep in mind that these are powers. These are power plays. You have the United States, you have the European Union, you have Russia and China there, and everyone wants to make the other guy look like crap. So whenever I was reading about the UK leaving European Union, everything that came from US media was super against, everything European. And of course, but having lived over there, it's very interesting how this started 20 years ago. This didn't start right now.
Oh yeah.
Kids, because I'm talking as someone that sent his kids to a school in UK. I had to explain my kid, that UK is actually in Europe, because a lot of these kids don't understand this. They will self-describe themselves as, we're not European. A kid in UK will tell you, I'm not European, I'm British. And okay, what continents are you in?
Yeah.
If you're not, are you?
That's like me saying I'm not North American, right?
It's like saying you're not American. I mean, yes, I'm
not North American.
You're American, but you're also part of the American continent. So someone in Guatemala is from the Americas, as they say in Europe. Americas, but these kids would not, because it had been going for, and anything that was promoting the idea that you're being subjected under the tyranny of the European Union in Brussels, and somewhat of that was true. It was not always entirely. I mean, the amount of money they got out of it. Margaret Thatcher got a fantastic deal for UK within the European Union. They were of course.
Well, they got to keep the pound, right? That was the big thing. They got to keep the pound, and they got to be part.
It was unfair for all the other countries, because Margaret Thatcher, a fantastic leader and negotiator, she got them, okay, we're going to be joining, but we're going to be getting these extra quotas of, whatever excuse they had, they had more of. So they were always making money out. They were making a lot more money than most people that ended up voting for this ever realized. They just didn't know how much money, or they got like this idea that we're going to be getting back our independence with our fish, and the fish business is like $15 million or something like that. So it's
part of how they sold it to the people of Great Britain anyway, though, because I think people forget how bad things were economically in Great Britain through the 70s. And
it was the poor man of Europe.
Thatcher kind of came along with Reagan, and they kind of had this kind of international teamwork going on. And the way that they were able to sell the UK on becoming part of the EU was, look at what we get. And they had lived so badly for so long. That was when the Tories took over, and I think the catchphrase was something like, it was brilliant. It was like, labor isn't working. Right. That was like the way they sold that election, And it was a brilliant marketing stroke, right? Because there's all these Labor Party members with no jobs, right? And they're like, labor isn't working. And so they sold them on it. And then I think that they had buyer's remorse 30 years later. And I don't know, are they actually out of the EU yet? Because I know they voted for it, but they're
completely out. They're completely out.
Good for them.
But the thing is, for example, after so many years of living as part of the European Union, you had, for example, right now, I think McDonald's in UK ran out of Sunday milkshakes or something stupid like that. And like 3 out of 4 stores are having shortages, because it used to be that anything that was being fed, UK does not produce enough food just to sustain itself. It's as simple as that. So it's importing like 55% of its food comes from Europe, not from Europe, because they are part of Europe as well, but from the European Union, from mainland Europe. So these are trucks constantly flowing in. Now, if you stop each truck for just 1 minute so as to actually do a border check, like now you are away from it. So you have to do a minimal check of, okay, what the hell is coming in here? Because we have no idea anymore. We're not part of the system.
Yeah, because it was like, I guess the EU kind of made Europe into the United States. That was
the idea.
If I have like a shipment of orange juice going from Florida to Nebraska, the truck just drives from Florida to Nebraska, and then that's it, right?
That's how it works
within the States. And now all of a sudden, like it's like Florida has a border. It's an international border, and that which seems to make total sense to an American that that's how Europe would work. But under the EU, it became a member state.
You would just drive. For example, you would just drive, and the only way you realized that we were in a different country was because the signs were in a different language, and all of a sudden everything was in a different language. But you would not. I mean, you could just go driving from Portugal to Germany and not stop other than for fuel. There's nothing. And in a way, if it has stuck to what it was originally intended, which is just free movement within the commerce and people moving. The problem was, at least the way I see it.
Well, nothing with government ever sticks to what it's supposed to be, right?
Right. When it starts imposing, like what they're trying to do now, like going after the Hungarian government, because the Hungarian government said, no, we're not going to be having homosexual propaganda in our schools. That's against our cultural values. And the European Union said, okay, if you're not teaching that, then we're putting sanctions on you. And the president of Hungary said, screw you, we're not doing it anyway. So it's like a paper tiger in a sense, like you cannot really, because states have full-blown sovereignty and they can just say, I'm out, like UK already did, which I think was very healthy for what the original intent of the European Union was supposed to be. And it was just reminded by actually UK leaving. So
it's become like Merkel's kingdom, right? Like it's like Germany has a
lot of power.
Yeah,
a lot of power. And
I think that's a problem with any law. Like, I don't think we should be moving toward greater centralization. We should be moving to more autonomy because I think it's already. Let's imagine Texas had seceded and we were our own independent republic right now. And I still have a problem with somebody in Austin having a huge voice on how I'm going to live up here.
Yeah,
and I have a huge problem with Fort Worth and Dallas having a huge say over how people get to live in Austin. Like, and I have a brother-in-law who's a cop, and he says, like, we need some level of uniformity when you go from one place to another so people know what to expect from the law. I'm like, that's a bullshit excuse because we already have, that ship has sailed. Like that what I'm talking about are these major decisions you get made, like how your kids are going to be educated in school. I don't think Austin should have anything to tell me about how schools run in my neck of the woods. Yeah. And they do. Right. And like, so what we have this really weird situation. It's why I hate HOAs, for example, because HOAs are a private government.
Yes.
Now, I love the idea of a private government if there is no state. Right. As long as there's a state, the last thing we need. So what you have with the government system in the United States is as you move down in size, all that government can do is add more law and regulation. So if my county wants to pass a law, my county can't pass a law that nullifies a state law. Right. So all my county can do is add more law on top of my back. And then within my county, my city can only add more law, regulation, and code. So we don't have this ability for like our little bubbles to actually push back at all. And so, okay, fine. I guess we have to live with the way things are to a degree. There's things I'd like to change. It's not going to happen. I accept that. I know the way things I'd like them to be, but I also am a realist. I understand the way things are. But I don't think we need to then be thinking, oh, well, it'd be a great idea is if the United States, Canada, and Mexico created like the North American Union. I don't think that's a good idea. That's now I got somebody in Mexico City telling somebody in Tampa, Florida, the way things should be. And so when I saw that, even when I was a kid back then, saw that whole EU coming together, I was like, this doesn't seem like a good idea. Like it seems like
I'm going to be doing devil's advocate for you here because
I'm sure it was convenient for travel.
The thing is this, it's not just that it's convenient. You don't have enough mass. You don't have enough weight in the world without it. I mean, look at what you're just saying about United States, Texas. Now, Texas on its own wouldn't be as heavy as a heavy hitter on its own as it would as part of the United States. I mean, yes, today it's a shitty situation right now because with everything in Afghanistan, everything changed from that moment. Everyone went like, okay, so you have the drones, you have the most powerful army on the planet, and a bunch of guys that are having love affairs with goats all of a sudden have you running. So it's kind of, but that doesn't change the fact that 50 states together have a lot more power. I mean, if not only do you have more power,
but see, this is stupid. This is a dumb argument because you think we'd really let somebody invade Canada or Mexico? Right? We don't have to share common government to share a common alliance that we would protect each other. And then here's the other thing. What do we want to do? Do I want to tell the rest of the world how to live? Or do I want to sit within my little fiefdom of Texas and just basically say, if you come here, we'll fuck you up? Right? We don't need to be controlling the rest of the world. All we need to be able to do is see to, like, we should not be playing offense with the military unless somebody's already attacked us. And like, then I'm all for it. We'll go in and bomb you to the Stone Age and then leave. Like, occupying forces are a bad idea. And the worst thing is to go into a country that has never been stable and decide, oh, we're going to install stability. Like, the U.S. didn't fail in Afghanistan because we can't beat the Taliban. That's a nonsensical concept. Like, the U.S. failed in Afghanistan because we thought that people in Afghanistan, the majority, wanted what we have in the United States, and they don't. Yeah. Like, I saw a very big mistake by one of
the Russians couldn't deal with him either.
And the Russians will do shit we won't do.
If the Russians leave and say, okay, I'm not touching this anymore,
that should be your clue.
Ever in your life. Just go away, walk away, look at something else.
Because look how the Russians would handle something compared to us. So we're in a city street, and somebody takes a shot of us out of a window. So what do the U.S. military does? Well, we're going to storm that place, find the guy that shot us, and get him. Right? The Russians would just go, yeah, bring in the bomb, and like, boom, like, well, there was innocent people, and they shouldn't have shot at us, right? So like, if they can't, but the problem was we tried to install this
it's a system, very different culture, a very different mentality.
And so what I saw that was clearly like they used the wrong B-roll. They said there were Afghan army surrendering to the Taliban. And what it was is an Afghani holding an M4 and a Taliban guy holding an AK. And they both set their guns down and they hugged.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I'm not saying that the Taliban are going out giving hugs. What I'm saying is that right there showed that a lot of these guys that we put uniforms on, we trained, we gave guns.
Were never convinced about anything they were doing.
No. And most of these Taliban that came out of the hills, they came from Pakistan. The Pakistanis are funding them. They all drove down the road. We didn't want to do it. Like, if they wanted to do something where we could have really changed the calculus when we made the agreement to withdraw, when they all came out and started convoying down the roads, if the U.S. really wanted to change everything right there, if they were willing to break their word, and we break our word all the time, so why wouldn't they? If they would have called in airstrikes at that point, they could have wiped out 80% of Taliban forces because they were all driving in lines down. It would have been like the highway of death in Iraq. At least they could have said for the withdrawal. They could have done this. They could have said, you know what? We're leaving like we agreed to. You're not coming into Kabul. Oh, we've come to Kabul. Okay, here's how this works. There's a circle around Kabul. If you come inside that circle, the Predator drones are going to blurt you. And I guarantee you, I mean, there might have been some one-off or whatever, like the terrorist attack today, right? But the Taliban would have said, they're leaving. They're leaving. Like, and then we could have had an orderly withdrawal from Kabul. We shouldn't have ever gave up Bahram Air Base, right? That was
that was lunacy, stupidity.
Right? I was having to explain this to my grandson today. He's like, well, what's the difference between Kabul Airport? And I'm like, Kabul is like Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. It's not a military installation. It doesn't, there's military there, but it's not an air base.
But why would you leave everything? I mean, usually this is basic stuff. I mean, I've never been in the military, and I know that you never leave weapons behind. You just blow the crap out of everything, or you take it.
No,
the way you destroy it.
The way you would have withdrawn, if you would have done it with any brains, you would have, number one, you would have created a green zone and said, don't cross it. Because and if you do, not only are we going to blurt you, we're going to blurt you back another 30 miles. So don't do it. Then you would have evacuated you would have actually upped military presence. Then you would have evacuated all your own civilians. Then you would have evacuated all your vetted, friendly locals that are under danger. And then the military would have left. And on the way out, the Spectre gunships would have leveled everything that you would have told people, like, get away. Get away. Anything you couldn't strap C4 to, the Spectres and the drones would have leveled it from the sky, and then you would have said, it's yours, do what you will with it. Our problem was, like, if you're going to try to make any understanding of how we screwed this up, would be that, okay, we stood up this Afghan army and Afghan Air Force. If we would have taken that approach, we would have basically said, we don't believe you're going to stand. They weren't anyway, though, and we knew they weren't. But that's the cover that, well, we had to give the Afghan government and the Afghan army the ability to stand up. It's Saigon 2.0. Like,
and it's also contracts. This is all weapons that have to be made and paid for by you.
Yeah.
So you have to pay for all of this.
They want to take away my AR, but they just gave like 800,000 M4 selective fire,
that's
rock
rich,
and roll, right, over to
rich.
the Taliban, nice. to these goat humpers, right? Like, you're not getting my this is again what gives me hope in my heart. There's a huge contingent in America that we feel this way. You can have my guns, but you're getting the bullets first. Right. And so maybe you should think before you do this, and look at the alternative. So the average Australian, when they instituted gun control for the public good,
they gave them up,
took them in and said, here, I don't want to be harming the world or whatever. Like
how many Americans? Let me ask you this: how many Americans, if right now it's banned and you have to because of the children or white supremacy or whatever bullshit, it's illegal for you to have ARs, and yet how many Americans would surrender those right away? Formal law.
I think most people that own them wouldn't. Now, I'm not saying the average gun owner would stand, right? I did some calculus one time, and it came out to about somewhere between 50 and 55 million people in America own at least a gun. But the guy that owns a 38 revolver that he keeps in his nightstand in case somebody breaks in when the bullets are in a different place, like that guy is not necessarily helpful. Most people that own ARs, like you're at a different level in your mindset when you step up to buying an AR, right? Like that, like there's a reason you buy something like that. So
I don't mind because I like shiny things.
Now we do have a lot of people who are gun owners that are hunters or whatever that, if they came up in a different mindset, they have a 30-06 for shooting a deer and they have a shotgun for shooting birds, and they actually feel like, well, what do you need an AR for? There are people like that,
the famous
right?
FUD, the gun FUD.
And I would say, but I say there's less of them. There's less of them than there used to be, right? Like my dad and my granddad's generation, they really didn't see the point, right? These are guys that served in Vietnam, World War II, Korea, etc. They didn't really see the point of having like these like pseudo military weapons. Gen X took over. You know what? They screwed up. They left us alone. We raised ourselves. And we're like, oh, I can get it. Like we went and served in the military, and we're like, I can buy an AR. Like when I got out of the army, I didn't even know I could buy an AR.
Right.
And as soon as I found I could buy an AR, I'm like,
you got it.
I'm going to buy it. And back then you could only have 10-round mags unless you had the grandfathered ones. But like, I'm like, oh, I could buy it. No shit, really? Okay. And like, I'm buying two, right? I didn't know I could. So I came out of that generation. I was raised with a gun in my hand. But a handgun was a revolver. A rifle was for killing deer, or it's like a 22, right? Like, and then you had a shotgun, and that, like, every man that I knew growing up as a teenager owned a shotgun or two, because maybe you had one that was more specialized for like waterfowl or turkey, a deer rifle, a 22, and some sort of a handgun. But I didn't know anybody with a semi-auto. I think the other thing was, like, our states have different laws. So there was nothing in the state of Pennsylvania that said you could not own a semi-auto rifle. But you cannot hunt with a semi-auto rifle as far as big game. So, like,
you wouldn't get it.
You wouldn't do it. Point? And so I came to Texas, and guys were like AR-10s shooting deer. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like I didn't have a problem with it, but I just didn't like that's okay.
It's not your typical deer gun.
Because you couldn't go out with like a Remington 750, deer rifle, but it's semi-auto. You couldn't hunt with that. Like you get arrested for doing that in Pennsylvania. I don't know. I guess they think it's easier to kill a deer with a semi-auto. I just think you get your body beat a little bit less because it takes some of the recoil away. That's But yeah, we've gone pretty long. I need to wrap soon, but this has been badass, dude.
This was great.
We haven't talked forever.
We have to do it again. It would be awesome if we did, but we already.
Then we should poll like your people and mine, and like what do they want us to talk about? Like maybe like
that'd be great.
Make my people throw questions for you, and then your people throw questions for me, and then we throw them at each. Take turns, like an AMA relay or something, right?
That would be cool. Hey, listen, anyone watching this, you have the comments probably down there, and absolutely. But it's been great catching up with you, and I really enjoy listening to you because you're always very well informed as of what's going on. But man, a bunch of topics we still need to go through.
Yeah, man, let's do it. And if anybody from your folks want to find me, I'm on YouTube as well. You can find me on YouTube, and I'm sure Fernando can throw a link to my channel in. And then my website is thesurvivalpodcast.com. I do a podcast 5 days a week. And I've been doing that since 2008.
Yeah.
And we get anywhere between 200 and 250,000 downloads of the podcast across all the podcast networks. So somebody's listening, so we must be doing something right. So come check us out. I mean, thanks for reaching out, Fernando. We haven't, like I said, we haven't talked in years, and this is.
I suck at this. I suck at keeping in touch with people. You know, I suck at keeping in touch with people. But
I do too.
We have to make a bit of an effort and do this more often, because I think it's. I mean, I enjoy it. You do too, and I bet people will like it as well. So.
Well, you know, we should get together in the real world, but like one of us is going to have to get the shot then, and it ain't going to be me. I ain't doing it. Like
you go first. I mean, it just got approved by the FDA.
I had COVID, bitch. I got natural immunity. You ain't had COVID yet, so you got to get the shot.
I'm not planning. I mean, I wore a gas mask when I had to, so I'm good, man. I was wearing first few months of COVID, I was wearing my GSR, General Service Respirator, in the supermarket. I was like this.
Well, at least it works, right? At least that'll work, because like these people with bandanas and surgical masks, like a surgical mask does not stop a virus. And people are like,
it is not designed for that. It's not designed to stop it.
No, and people say, well, then why does a surgeon wear one when they do surgery? Bacteria, which are like, comparatively speaking, if this is a bacteria, you know, and the tip of this toothpick is a virus. And this is the difference of like a surgical mask to stop, and I'm not COVID, a virus period is like you put up a chain link fence to stop mosquitoes. No, right? That's what you've done. And it doesn't, and I'm sorry, it doesn't work. It's not going to work. We don't
need it has no seal whatsoever.
No seal.
It's not intended. It's intended to have to stop spit from a dentist or a surgeon doing surgery on you. So
it's a bacteria membrane is what it is. Like, so like I was in Army, and like we get NBC, nuclear biological chemical training, and one of those is you get your mask, your mop suit and all, and you learn fit for it, and then you go in a gas chamber. And then you break your seal, and then you get gassed, right? And I'm telling you, if there's no seal, there's no protection, right? Like if you're walking through a parking lot, you could smell this guy farted, this guy's smoking, and this chick's wearing perfume. You're not protected from anything. But let's not go off on a tirade on that. But
it's a good topic for the next one. But I'm not kidding. And people in my channel know I uploaded an Instagram myself walking down the aisles with a GSR. And I mean, even on the streets, cops looked at me. They wouldn't say a damn word. They just let me go. They would just let me. I mean, if you think people with a little thing, the complete mask, and especially but seriously, during the first period of time, we just didn't know exactly how bad things were.
I was worried for like the first month until we started to, because I didn't trust the data from China. So once we had it hitting ground zero here, it was like, okay, let's see. But once we started getting any kind of data, I'm like, okay, if you're not 800 pounds or 80 years old, you're probably going to be fine. Right. Yeah. And I know it's okay. Does that mean that you
could die? Anyone could die.
You can have a 41-year-old relatively healthy person could get really sick and die. Sure. But that can happen
with a number of other things.
Right. Yeah. Like we can't live in this kind of cocoon world afraid. Like you were in the respirator. One of my good friends, he was at a place when he was traveling. They said, you have to wear a mask at the store. Right. Yeah. And he's like, okay, let me go back to my car. So he goes back to his car. He had a freaking full-size Guy Fawkes mask. So he comes back with the Guy Fawkes mask on, right? And then they're like, well, it's a face covering, right? Like, and that's where some of I think this stuff has to be. Is we have to either be defiant or we have to be creative in our compliance,
having fun.
Mock the system. Like I understand being cautious in the beginning. Yeah. We didn't really know. At this point, if you're afraid of COVID, you're afraid of life. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Now, if you have a compromised immune system or something.
I still take precautions. If I'm going to a closed place full of people, and especially tourist times when there's a bunch of people really crowded, I put on my, the N95 or better. Okay. Right. So that's giving you, because in the studies before all of this, it has been proven that it works to a 75% chance of but it has to be the right thing, not just any piece of cloth covering your face. It doesn't work.
No.
Anyway,
No.
I don't want to take any more
yeah.
of your time. Yeah.
No, man. I appreciate you having me, man,
great,
and we'll do this again definitely.
Absolutely, man. Thanks, Jack, for everything, and we'll keep in touch. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.